Now, the composer of Follies is a man who begat legends and spawns cults. Love him or hate him, and some have been known to do both at the same time. He's changed the shape and style of the Broadway musical. The lyricist of West Side Story, the writer and composer of shows as diverse as A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, Company, Sweeney Todd, The Little Night Music, and Pacific Overtures. He's probably best known for having written one of the most recorded songs of all time, Send in the Clowns. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Stephen Sondheim. Welcome, Stephen. From a busy schedule, delighted to see you. You're here, obviously, to open the Follies.
Yes. Yes, we had a nice opening.
Yeah. You're an extraordinary man. The subjects that you pick for musicals are tremendously original. I mean, one wouldn't have thought that you would pick Ingmar Bergman's Smiles of a Summer Night on which to base a musical, but you did with the Little Night Music.
Yeah, well, we wanted to do, we being Hal Prince and I, wanted to do a romantic musical, and we had tried many years earlier to get the rights to a play called Ring Around the Moon that had a big success here. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't get the rights, so that 10 years later when we had the chance again, we tried again, and again we couldn't get the rights. And so we decided we would try to find the nearest thing to that. We wanted to get a musical that took place over a weekend and in some kind of elegant surround and dealt with romance. And the Bergman picture, though it's darker than Little Night Music, that is to say it's more about death, nevertheless provided us with a springboard for it, and with Bergman's approval.
And of course, probably the most popular and possibly the most recorded song that you'd ever done, Send in the Clowns,
yes,
was written as a kind of adjunct.
Oh, well,
the second thought?
Not exactly. There was a spot in the second act which required a song, but the leading lady, we had not expected to get anybody who could sing because we needed somebody who had great glamour and style and a sense of stage comedy. And we thought to get a lady like that of what we call a certain age and at the same time somebody who could sing was probably unlikely. So I made that part the lightest vocally. I wrote very few songs for that part. I had none for her in the second act. And this spot in the second act, which is sort of the climactic scene between her and her lover, I had intended to write a song for the man who was cast as a singer. And then we found that we cast Glynis Johns that she could sing. So that during the third week of rehearsals, Hal Prince said to me, I think we could afford to have Glynis sing this song because I think her voice is pretty. So why don't you go home and think about it? And I did. And it only took 2 days to write that song.
I remember going to see A Little Night Music in London, and it was enormously popular, great success, and great charabancs full of people coming from all over the country, and they sat there bemused because some of the music, in popular terms, was a little difficult, a little inaccessible. I sat there bemused myself, and everybody was waiting for Send in the Clowns. And once Gene Simmons, who sung it on the stage here, sung it, then we all went away happy.
There's a funny story. Ned Sharon was coming out of a music tent, which is a stock production, that is to say, of Little Night Music in the United States, and heard one couple at the end of the show going up the aisle. And it's right after seeing Little Night Music, the woman turned to her husband and said, "That song, Send in the Clowns, is so pretty. What's it from?"
You don't care, do you?
No. My goodness, it's the show that counts. I mean, it's lovely if you can get a popular song, but that's so, you know, popular song is so much a matter of luck. It's the right artist, it's the right song. I don't think Hello, Dolly might have been such a big hit if Louis Armstrong hadn't decided to record it when he did. And the same thing's true of Send in the Clowns, which was started off by Judy Collins, and if she hadn't, it was 2 years after the show had opened that she picked that song up. But the song had been lying around there for 2 years, and nobody recorded it, or nobody recorded it successfully. So it's very much a matter of luck.
But you don't believe, anyway, in making much concession to
there isn't that
popular taste.
Well, in these days, it's not a question of concession. In the old days, when popular music came from the stage and came from films, it made sense. But it doesn't anymore because popular music now, the source of popular music is the artists themselves, the recording artists. They write their own stuff for the most part. And it's the rare song that comes from the theater and becomes popular. And it's usually because it's picked up by somebody, or somebody puts a lot of money into plugging it or something like that. But it's rare. So there's no point. And in a way, it's a relief because 25 years ago, you had to worry about that sort of thing. Nowadays, you have to worry about it.
Your great inspiration was Oscar Hammerstein.
Yes, he was sort of a surrogate father for me, and he certainly taught me everything I know about the
But he wrote enormously popular
Yes, but
music.
in those days, all the popular songs came from movies and stage. This was before the pop revolution of the 50s.
Was he a help to you, Oscar Hammerstein?
All the time, yes. I always played everything I wrote for him. Up until the day he died, I always went to him first. Not necessarily for critical reaction, just because I wanted to share it with him. And one of the signs of my growing up was when I started to argue with him. In my mid-20s, I started to argue with him.
Because
I'd play him something he would criticize. I'd say, well, I don't know about that. And then I knew, and he could see that's like the son growing up and beating his father at tennis, you know.
It's the old cliche question, but how do you do it? You sit down at the piano and tickle the ivories and...
No, I try. I'll tell you, you know, you get limited by your own piano technique if you do that. My piano technique is moderate. I have a very good right hand and a very lumpy left hand. I'm very right-handed.
A lumpy left?
Oh, yes, good for that sort of stuff. But the right hand's very flashy. And I was, as a matter of fact, urged by my music teacher when I was 14, 15 to take up a concert career. And A, I don't like performing in public, and B, I realized my left hand was never going to be very good. So if you write at the piano, you tend... First of all, your muscle memory tends to make your fingers fall into the same chords. And secondly, if you have a bad left hand, it's going to show up in the music. So I try to write away from the piano as much as possible, try to hear the music, which is the way most classical composers did it, you know. It's if they had written at the piano, although Stravinsky is a famous exception. He wrote everything at the piano, which is very hard to believe when you hear something like Rite of Spring. But I try to write away from the piano, and I try to make the lyrics and the music develop at the same time.
You like to do it all yourself, though?
Oh, yes, yeah, I prefer it. I have fewer people to argue with.
How do you think Follies, a British audience regards Follies? Because we don't know Ziegfeld and his Follies.
Well, you have the Dillingham shows here, and you certainly have a history. You have a history of something slightly different here, which is music hall. That is to say, what we would call vaudeville in the United States. That is to say, top-line entertainers and dance numbers, song numbers. That's all the Ziegfeld Follies were. They were really vaudeville shows with, only they would have headliners like Fanny Brice or, you know, international entertainers. And then he was famous for his parade of chorus girls, beautiful chorus girls, which is what I suppose distinguishes Ziegfeld Follies from the, say, the British music hall tradition or the Dillingham shows or something like that. He was very strict, for example, about his girls not be thought of as ladies of the night or as easy pickups for the stage door Johnnies. He made them wear gloves in public, for example, and if he caught any of them on the street without gloves, she was fired. I mean, he absolutely, it was very, very important to him. And in fact, many of them married extremely well-to-do and very respectable people.
As indeed they did over here.
Oh, well, there it is. But it's probably because Ziegfeld wanted to be sure that they were not treated as, quote, chorus girls, end quote, but were treated as ladies. And he made them behave as ladies.
Yeah. Now, you first staged it, I think, on Broadway 16 years ago.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Has it changed since then?
Oh, yes, we changed it quite a deal. Our attitudes, Jim Goldman, who wrote it, and our attitudes have changed towards it. And Cameron McIntosh, who produced it, was anxious to have Jim take another look at it and maybe another take. So it's different in texture. It's a little hard to describe how different it is unless you'd seen both.
It's a great pleasure to talk to you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Stephen Sondheim. Thank you.